topic.
Yeah.
So really what I was telling everyone really is that with colorism, it's a big topic. You see it in everything. We see it at work. We see it in the way we treat each other. We see it everywhere. But now the question is, or rather what I wanted to focus on right now is really with dating. Now we talk about two main shows. We talk about Married at First Sight and Ready to Love. And it kind of came up. I think actually, Didi, you asked that question one day. We were talking about Brie about Married at First Sight. And we're like, is there colorism here? Or is it just her preference? Is that what she's really thinking of?
Yes.
And I guess that it got me thinking, because we always have people who talk about it. We've had various shows that they kind of mention it as well. Ooh, I can hear echo. Okay, they kind of mention it as well. And so I kind of want us to kind of jump into the conversation. But first of all, I guess to you guys, what do you consider colorism to be?
Go ahead, Shane, because
Didi passed it to me, and I'm like, I'm still fleshing through what it even means, just like globally, let alone what it means to me personally. If you just go over to Google and you type it in, I don't know that that's the definite, I don't know that that's the most accurate and truest definition, but what it says prejudice or discrimination, like you said, Lola, against individuals with dark skin tone. And when I start to flesh through my thoughts around colorism, I feel like it could also be included to the other side of the spectrum as well, right? Where it would include not just darker tones, but even lighter tones and possibly mid-tones. So I think for me, where I'm landing at it right now in this moment, and it could change, but where I'm landing now in this moment is colorism is the discrimination or hate towards a darker or lighter skin tone. I'm still not sure about like that midpoint yet, because I'm not really sure where we're even at with that as a culture. But yeah, but I definitely know that you're going to get some pretty big expressions or feelings if someone is of a darker skin tone and there's comments being made or preferences being made, and the same thing on the lighter side as well.
That's kind of how I see. What do you think, Didi?
that colorism is, for me, is like, see, it all has to do with how I was brought up, where I'm from, on a different culture. Colorism is basically like, if let's say we have the same race. For me, if we have the same race, right, and then let's say I'm attracted to a Caucasian woman, I'm not attracted to black women because the Caucasian is of another race. So I'm not attracted to black women. So then I put down black women, I shun black women because of the color of their skin. But then I'm attracted to a Caucasian woman, or maybe a Chinese woman or Hispanic woman, just because they're lighter. So that to me is colorism. But for me, with that point you made, Lola, when it came up on a Little Black Books platform, when all of us were discussing it, I am still a little bit confused as to, is it colorism when it's within the same race? That's the thing I'm just a little confused about, because my preference can be a lighter black woman or a darker black woman, but does that mean it's colorism? But if I shun black women and then I'm attracted to a Caucasian woman, like I say, or a Chinese woman, then I think that's when it becomes colorism. That's what it means to me.
So kind of to your question, and which is why I wanted us to talk about it. But before I continue, my sister has joined us yesterday. Christine, what's up? I want to say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello, Christine.
She's
nice
following
to meet you.
Adisha times, but welcome.
Y'all got your own time zone, huh?
You know, we do have our own time zone, and I would like to say that I landed in this world 2 months early, and I feel like I've just been making up for lost time since then, you know?
I hear you, sis. Keep pressing on.
So yesterday, I guess you must have heard us talking. We're talking about colorism. I guess what we think it is. What do you think? What's colorism to you?
That's a really great question, actually, because it's one of those words that seems so simple, and then when you try and define it, it's not as simple. I would say colorism, for me, would always be rooted in trauma. And I think that it would be arrogant of us to assume that all of our preferences are we just prefer it that way, rather than we were taught that that way would be more pleasurable in some way or more painful in a different way. So I would consider colorism perhaps to be, recently I've started to inspect my own preference, and I've dated more white men than I've dated black men. And I cannot deny that there is some link between the relationship I had with my father, who is a black man and a dark-skinned black man, and then the relationship that I had with many other black men within my own community. That definitely had an effect on who I was going to date, or who I felt more comfortable around, or who I felt more loved by, let's say. So if I had the idea that my dad, who is a black man and a dark-skinned black man, didn't really love me, then I have the idea that black men can't really love me the way I crave to be loved. So then I'll go somewhere else.
I love that explanation. And Didi, to your point, for me, when I think about colorism, I see it within the race, within our race. So within black people, not so much on the outside, but us judging each other based on the shade. So if you're, and it's both, I won't say it comes from both ends, but the people who tend to suffer the most tend to be people who be on the darker end of the spectrum. But also the people on the lighter end of the spectrum get judged or accused by the other end. So it just kind of goes back and forth. So that's kind of how I'm seeing colorism. And kind of going into, there's something, I guess, before we kind of go into the meat of the topic, the next thing I was kind of looking at when I was kind of going over everything was, you know, the brown bag theory, like, you know, what would they do, the color wheel, like who is light-skinned, who is dark-skinned, and what's in between. Now, for me, coming from Nigeria, in Nigeria, they would consider me light. But here, I'm brown. In fact, the other day, someone said, oh, you want to call me a dark girl. I'm like, so it really is so relative. Now, the paper bag thing, I think was, you know, you put the bag next to you, and if you were the same shade, you were good. No, if you were lighter, you were good, and if you were something like that. So, what do you guys understand of the color wheel? And for you, where do you think it? So, for example, Didi, where do you think? Well, I guess you might already know where you fall.
Where what?
Where do you fall on the color wheel? Do you think? In terms of the
black.
shades.
What they say? The saying goes: the blacker the berry, the blacker the juice. I'm black. I fall under the dark. I'm melanin, like real dark melanin, like dark. Because if for me, I grew up playing a lot of, in America they call it soccer, in the Caribbean we call it football, and I was always in the sun, and I got a tan. And then when I tell you I was really dark, I was literally like, when I smile, my teeth was like, you really see my teeth, like it would stand out because I was really dark. But then the more I stay out of the sun, I just get a little lighter tone of darkness, basically. But for me, I am dark. Shani, on my island, they would call, well, we speak Creole, they would call Shani a Shabian because of her skin tone. It's lighter. So we call lighter people Shabian. That's what we label them as, which is also a compliment. You and your sister will call you guys brown, but for me, I'll come off as black. Really, really dark.
Yes, where do you think you fall on the color wheel? Where do you fall on the color wheel?
But wait, can we discuss the fact that that would be considered a compliment?
Be considered what?
Isn't that funny that would be considered a compliment? Like, you're complimenting someone by telling them that they're light-skinned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's colorism, right? That's what we're talking about.
I guess that's how we were raised. because the thing is, for me, colorism has to do with our background, like what we come from, like basically what we taught at school as well, because they would always make it look like the history. It has to play that. It has a lot of things that fall into play. Like the history they taught us, it is not accurate, and they always make it look like white or lighter skinned people are beautiful, and they always make it look like black or darker skinned people are ugly. And I learned that from school. Like some of the classes, the history classes we had, that's what they would say and do. So they try to brainwash us and basically make us think that lighter or anything to do with white is good and anything to do with black or dark is bad. So it's something that we learn, but it's you when you get older to educate yourself about your culture, your race, and your ethnicity. So
You know, I don't think that it's as easy as just like re-educating yourself, because if you don't know that there's a gap, then you don't know that you can educate yourself, right? And colorism, it affects everything. Hi, Opa.
Hey guys.
So
Hey,
Evening
good.
or afternoon, everybody.
Hey,
What's up?
Christopher.
it's good to see you, Opsy.
Hey,
So colorism
I'm
affects
good.
everything. Just it's not just your shade. It's like what we consider the things in our society that we consider great or luxury or premium, we associate with white people. And that's always our standard. Let's get closer to what looks like white, and then that's quality, right? So colorism isn't just about, like, to me anyway, it's not just about someone saying being lighter is better and being darker is worse. It's also like our whole way of living. Like even the idea you have in your mind when you talk about ghetto or the ghetto, there's the chances are that more people you'll see that will be darker, right? Or that would be your perception of what ghetto is. So it's like Kim Kardashian syndrome, right? I have nothing against Kim Kardashian, but the things that Kim Kardashian does, if someone who was my skin color or darker did those things, they would be seen as ghetto. But she's seen as...
Yeah.
Oh, and yes, I consider myself dark skin. I think that I, for a while, had some sort of delusion that I was a little bit lighter than I actually am. And I saw a picture of myself a couple of years ago, and I was like, wow, I'm really dark.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I don't, but that's the thing for me in terms of the shade. Then I'll come to you, Shanae. Is it depends on the day. Like for me, some days, you know, I feel really brown, and then some people like, well, yeah, you're kind of light, like you're kind of yellow. Like my daughter used to make fun. She don't say that anymore because she's Americanized now. But when she was a kid, she would say that. She used to call me white black. So there's a shade difference between my daughter and I, and she's a little darker, and so she called me white black, which was a very weird description. But now she calls me dark. So it depends on who's talking. That's how I see it. What do you think, Shanae?
Yeah, it definitely does. For me, it depends on the time of year. So in the summer months, I feel like I get this beautiful bronze, like brown. I'm like, if I could just keep this all year, you know, and then wintertime comes in and I just go like, bleh. I'm flat, I'm light, I don't have any, I feel like my melanin is just seeping away. And I'm like, I want to keep my, and it's funny because as women that like, if you wear makeup, sometimes you have to buy 2 different shades because your skin really will change shades throughout the year. And so if you were to see like a picture of my mom and dad, my dad is extremely like what they would call light skin. He's very, very pale. Like he can pass for a white man. And then my mom is, I would just call her brown. I cannot remember growing up being told I was light, brown, or anything. I was just a black girl. It wasn't until I became an adult and other black people would identify me as, oh, you're light skinned. And they wouldn't say it with a, like, Diddy, it wasn't a compliment the way they would say it. It was like, oh, well, you're light skinned. And I'd be like, oh, wow, I was today years old when I learned that I was light skinned. Like, oh, I am? Because I'm like, my dad's light skin. He's like the color of my hand. That's him all year round. I'm not that. So how did I come off as light skinned to you? So I guess it's just based on everyone's perception and how they see your tone. But I would define myself a brown skinned black woman.
Cool. Well, Opie, welcome to the group. We were talking about what colorism is to us and what you consider where you consider yourself in the color wheel.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Black. Yeah. I mean, yeah, black. Just black.
But maybe brown.
Yeah,
I think black is a color of a pair of shoes. So to me, like when I look at the shades, we're all shades of brown.
Wait, how are you going to ask him a question, Lola? How are you going to ask him a question and then you're going to fight for him to answer the question?
Yeah, he said black. I think he's brown.
Yeah, you are, but that's his answer.
Yeah, but I can give him what I want
your answer. If you wanted your answer, why'd you invite him on the show?
Oh, snap. Oh, wait, come from
beef. Boom, boom, boom.
Right. All right, Opie, go ahead. So tell us, what do you think colorism is?
Yeah. It's a lot of things. I mean, real colorism, well, I don't know if I can really call it real colorism, but for example, I think it's my theory now that since Obama, probably mainstream America see a certain complexion as the enlightened African American or the enlightened Black person. And I do think the narrative sometimes can be skewed against a dark-skinned person in America or anywhere else, really. I think that that's what I would define as serious colorism. Then we have colorism that we see in hip hop videos, of course, you know, most of the time, where the video vixen, if such a term is still permitted, is usually like shades lighter than the rapper, and usually only that. And then you have it down to people's personal preferences. You know, I only go for light-skinned girls, I only go for light-skinned men. That would also qualify. So would I only go for chocolate men or chocolate women, by the way, too. So yeah, so all through that, yeah, there's colorism. And some colorism, I think the last two I spoke about, sometimes it is a thing, it is an ism, but as human beings, we have so many isms. There's heightism, there's ageism, there's so many that on a good day, I can take it seriously. And on a bad day, on an impatient day, it's just a person's prejudice. And, you know, I'm going to leave them where they are. And when it's really, really serious, it's something that we kind of need to talk about. And is it really holding some of our people back, basically? But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's what I have really so far.
Well, you brought up some of the isms, and I know there's this new word they're throwing around called the featureism. Like, I guess it's based on the features. If your nose is a certain way, of course, for us females, the hair. Like all of us, we have this hair thing that goes on, you know, how it grows. Is it long? Is it straight? Before, see all the numbers, I don't understand. So yeah, I guess that kind of goes into it. But kind of going, there was something, you know what, let's start with one more thing. I kind of read through this thing while I was going through, and it was this show. Actually, let me show you guys what it is right now.
While you're looking this up, Lighton, Oppe actually brought up a really good point when he said what he thought colorism wasn't. So I think when we're defining colorism, it's hard to say, because you mentioned preference and we were talking about preference before. It's hard to say, like, when is it colorism and when isn't it? Like, if you ask me that, I would say, well, it's normal for me. It would be considered perhaps self-loving for me to be most attracted to someone who has a similar complexion to me, right? But then if you're raised in a family where you have one parent that's dark skin and one parent that's a little lighter skin, what if your preference for skin color was simply reflected in your preference for parent? So if you preferred your dad or you're closer to your dad, perhaps you would like people who looked more his color. If you preferred your mom, then you might prefer. So it's like it's hard to see where you would put a line in the sand.
That's such a great point, Christine, because as a young girl, my dad was my hero, right? He was my everything. So naturally, I thought, oh, date someone like your dad. And I guess you would look at my dating history when I first started and think, oh, she's being colors, because I was specifically choosing men that looked like him, which were light-skinned, right? And so as I've matured and grown, I've dated all across the spectrum now. And I don't have necessarily a preference towards either one at this point. But I definitely could say it started out with just having a love for my dad, being a daddy's girl. And that's what I gravitated to. I wasn't thinking colorism or anything.
But Kristen, that's exactly, sorry, Lola, that's exactly my point, because that's what I'm saying. Like, within the same race, we have so many different shades of brown. And that's like, we have so many different. So then, that's why I'm trying to wonder, why would, if let's say you with a lighter skinned black man, why is it colorism? A look example Shanae's parents. So why would we think of it or say it's colorism?
Well, it really depends on, I guess, if you look back at the history. So I guess it comes to the why. Because what was it, just like were they just attracted? Did they just meet a certain way? Or was there, I won't say a lineup, but were there people in the room, and did she suddenly just kind of be more attracted to him for his features as opposed to his person?
Yeah, that.
So yeah,
this is a topic that's really, really confusing.
Yeah, it's true, and that's kind of why I like the topic. And I guess there was one. I guess in terms for us, the reason why I think it's important to talk about is really what is the roots. Like, if we say colorism is a preference for something else, what do we think the root is? Is it based on just oh, I just like the way it looks? Or is it deeper than that? Is there more to it? Is there history behind it? Yetunde, since you're the teacher here, you want to tell us what you think?
I Sorry, I was distracted. Can you repeat that question?
So I was saying that when we talk about colorism, don't believe it. Since we talk about colorism, right? Is there a history or a root behind it? Is it just a plain preference of, oh, you know what, that's nice, I like to date that person, or is it more? Is there more to it than that? Is there a basis behind it? Is there a reason why you go for a particular shade or not?
Absolutely, for sure. I think there's a reason behind everything that we do. It's just nature in general, just being part of nature. I don't know. I hope you guys can hear me okay, because it feels like I have a lag or something. So just if you think about nature, we're all part of nature, right? And everything in nature has a purpose, a reason. There's a reason for everything. We may not know the reason, but that doesn't mean there isn't a reason. So just when we're talking about in our parental dynamics, if you have a healthy attachment to your parent, I would guess that if you have a close attachment to your dad, for example, and your dad is light skinned and your preference is for light skinned people, that most likely is coming from love, because that's the association you have with love. Whereas if you have a traumatic or dysfunctional bond with one of your parents, and let's say that parent is light too, or you feel like you're always having to prove yourself to this one parent that's light, and now you're going for light-skinned people, that's not from a place of love. That's more of a place of looking for validation and acceptance. And if this light-skinned person accepts me, then that means that I'm good enough. Then that means I'm worthy to be loved. So now that's why that's my preference.
Lola, can I add too that I think our experiences as well can shape those preferences. So I can remember, and one of my friends had to call me out on this, and I know it's going to be a little bit different, but I think it's in line with what we're talking about. So dated a Puerto Rican gentleman who we didn't have a great relationship. It was very toxic. And I made this statement, I'm gonna leave them Puerto Ricans alone. They're too violent. And my friend was like, Puerto Ricans are violent, or he was violent? And I was like, all right, you're right. Fair. He was violent. She was like, you really want to make sure you watch that, because you're now going to have this lens towards Puerto Ricans as a whole based off this one man's experience with you. And that's not true of that entire culture. And she's right on that. And I think we sometimes can even do that in our experiences. Like Christine said, if you have a poor experience with someone who's lighter or darker skinned, you may not ever say it or even think it, but it's very well a tape in your mind that plays. And now when you're looking at people, when you see that similar skin tone, like it's kind of in a way it triggers you, and it could cause you to either draw closer to or away from someone just based on that. Is that also colorist too? Like, oh, it's so layered.
Yeah. I think it really lies in the motivation and what you do with it, I think. Because, I can look at it like, okay, if I say I have a preference for people or males who look like my dad, which is what it's kind of boiled out to be. A lot of the time, a lot of the guys I'm with are his shade, and he was much darker. But then again, I guess someone was asking, is that a point? Is that colorism right there? Am I looking at it one over the other? And I think if I use the term colorism, maybe if there's a benefit in it for that person, then maybe I wouldn't use it as colorism. Or if I'm saying one person is better than the other, I think that's where I'm kind of deciding. Okay, what do you think in terms of what do you think the history of colorism is, and what would you say is one good over the other? Is it kind of the same thing, going for either light or going for dark?
I mean, if I'm to be a little philosophical about it, I think whether it's good or bad it'd really be up to the person who is going through it, who is I don't know, I could almost say suffering from it, and because when I was listening to you speak, Lola, I was thinking part of the problem, even when you do think you can identify when someone's suffering from colorism or making choices based on colorism, is how do you, as the external factor, begin to start talking to them about it? Like, I think you're colorist, I mean, if they ask your opinion and, you want to break it down for them, that's another thing. But it's so personal and not necessarily vague, but there's so many shades to it that unless the person's with a therapist, or it's just so obvious based on the way they speak, you can't really break them down. And so I don't know if I'm far away, because imagine if I see somebody every day who's, for example, just saying, yeah, only want those lighties, only want those lightings. And then I go to the person's home and I find out that the things we've been talking about here, maybe associated with one parent, is more favorable. If it's that, then do I kind of soften my stance towards the person? Only me kind of getting the background to that person's life can give me a clearer picture, kind of, because I wouldn't even call it a clearer picture. So I hope I'm not waffling, but I just think it's hard to really pinpoint somebody else. But in my opinion, can it be bad? I mean, definitely. It can be really harmful to innocent bystanders if you're vocal about it and so dismissive about your least preferred shade, for example. That's when it can start getting really problematic. Not to talk about being problematic for yourself, because if you're making those kind of decisions and when it's fickle, and I mean, I'm sure I can be permitted to call it fickle when either you feel like you have to prove something to somebody, or I think another version for me of colorism is sometimes it's like, and it's really dismissive to say this, but you know how sometimes people can like the reign in fashion. So sometimes hip hop videos can kind of present to the youth a certain kind of look that is the in thing right now. And so everybody's talking about something, but it hasn't even touched your heart. It hasn't reached your heart. It's just at the head level. And you're just like, yeah. That kind of person, yeah, there is a problem because you probably really don't know what love is. You don't even know who you like or what you like. So I would say it's a problem for them. But if I were to suffer colorism from somebody else, I would just try to kind of watch myself and be responsible for my emotions, because that's that person's problem. So I think really what I'm just trying to say, sometimes it can be a very private problem, and even a private form of analysis. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. So yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I think that's what makes it kind of difficult to break down. Now that I've kind of listened to your point of view, which is why this topic is not, it's always a dialogue and a conversation, never a monologue, because when you hear someone else's point of view, it makes you think differently. Because I guess when I was starting it, I was thinking of more like, you know what, when these guys, because I'm putting the guys in that bracket, when these guys are always picking these light-skinned girls and da-da-da-da-da. But now thinking of it the other way, if you flip it the other way as a preference for the other side, then is it the same thing, or should I be thinking of it a different way? And then, of course, that changes now the history of the root of it, because the way I was thinking about it, if I thought of it that way, then I would now talk about the root being, root based in when we were colonized, when we were told what was, the standard of beauty, what looked good, what's best, what's pure. But now if we think about it in the different realms, then the root could be really different depending on how you grew up, who showed you love the most, what was safe for you. And I think now that's kind of making me think. So it's now showing that there's a spectrum here, but I would still want us to be aware of when we're doing things, what it means. Didi, did you have anything to say about the root or anything?
Of course.
No, I don't have much to say, but from, what I learned from school as well, we know in colonial times that the lighter skin blacker person would be put into the house to work, and the darker skinned person, they will put them out in the field. So I all feel like also this, like like I say, sometimes it's some of the stuff we learn and we dissect and we see it, and like sometimes certain jobs they'll prefer a lighter skinned person. And why would that be? Because to them they think that that lighter skinned person would present the product to the client much better than a darker skinned person. That's what some of them think. But really and truly, that it also helps, it also starts the problem with like people seeing that, okay, to them that a lighter skin or being lighter skin would probably solve certain problems they have, or it would make them gain certain things easier and faster than a darker skinned person. So I think all those little factors make people think like, okay, well, it's starting to look like a colorism thing. Or basically it is a colorism thing because people prefer, or they would prefer a lighter skinned black person to present them or advertise for them, or bring a product to a client for them. Because on my island, our prime minister is light skinned, and somebody actually made a statement that they prefer to have a lighter skinned person representing the country than a black person. And people went at him real bad. They started cursing him out and saying like it's starting to look like it is colorism, because to them they see lighter skin as better, or it's more presentable to people than darker skin. So then all that comes into play. Like I think the way we society teaches us or sometimes the messages society give us makes us feel and see like, okay, that's one of the problems that causes colorism.
Hey, like before we move on, I just wanted to, like the sound I'm not here when I'm listening, I'm not hearing it very well. It sounds fuzzy. I just want to make sure that that's just me and that everyone else can hear well before we drop all of this amazing wisdom and no one can really completely hear what we're saying.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't hear like a fuzzy mic sound?
Like I hear a clicking sound sometimes, and that happens when all of us have our mics on. So usually when we talk and then kind of mute ourselves, then it kind of is like still. But other than that, I hear all the nuggets you're dropping, Christine. Don't worry, everyone's gonna see you.
No, I was just making sure. If it's just me that's hearing it, then
no. I appreciate it. Thanks. Don't worry. I think that the clicking sound was louder when we were all on, but once we kind of mute one by one, it's almost, I won't say it's perfect, but it's pretty good. So I'll kind of jump in now since we're here talking about, I guess, the experience of colorism. Like for me, I won't really say I felt it. I mean, I hear about it, but I also feel I grew up in different places and I had a different interest, because a lot of people talk about colorism because it's in different places. We want to focus on dating, but we think about other things, work, being more acceptable, people seeing there's this word where, if you're lighter, you're more acceptable to the other race. I'm not sure how true that is, but if you think about, what's that Will Smith show? When his first sitcom, when they had the Dark Aunt Viv, she was the first one, and then they switched out for the light one. Right, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, exactly. And they switched them out. There was a whole big thing there. I don't know if that was just simple, oh, well, we're going to switch to someone else who might be cheaper, or maybe they'll try and be more appealing. But personally, my experience really hasn't been about colorism, but more about, because people say that I can come off a little bit aggressive. And a lot of times they say that when they see dark females in particular, they'll say that, oh, you know what, even when she's not being aggressive, she comes off aggressive. But but they call me dark, so that's true. It might ring, but my experience for colorism really isn't that. But it's just me hearing about it and maybe not paying attention to other people's opinions. Maybe that's why I don't really notice it. But you have a lot of people talking about how at work they feel that there's a preference for you if you're lighter, or people listen to you if you're lighter. So I guess I just wanted to hear what you guys think. If I'll start with, okay, how about you? You want to tell us I know London, it's more covert, so it's not that obvious, but have you felt either, with meeting females or work or just talking or being you, have you felt there's been some difference when you've been compared to someone else who might have been a lighter shade than you?
No, not really. No, not at all. But what's really interesting though? I think probably 10, 15 years ago, because, it's not really controversial, but I think it's a balance a lot of times, because colorism, for example, in relationships, the effects are usually suffered by women, men just preferring a lighter woman. But ages ago, there was this big thing, especially in Nigeria, where it was like everyone was talking about light-skinned men, like the shows, different people. And so I like to poke with my sisters sometimes now, because it's like when that was the biggest thing, and the girls, because we were all really young at that time, were coming to me telling us brazenly it wasn't a thing then, it wasn't a problem, it hadn't become an ism. You just took it. It's like now, if someone says to me, yeah, I prefer a slightly more masculine gentleman, well, I'd be like, okay, cool, that's just what it is. That is what it kind of was then. You took it. You couldn't complain about it because you look kind of weak. You just take it. So it's like these kind of preferences have kind of always been around. And so I think I don't say suffered, but I went through that ages ago. Right now in London, I don't think I'm the person who would probably go through that, unless someone secretly thinks the words of I don't know, much lighter or literary person probably hold more weight than my words. I don't know. I don't feel that though.
You, Shanae, would you say you've experienced any kind of colorism, either at work or in the dating field?
It's interesting. So colorism for me didn't even become like a thing, honestly, until the last year and a half, 2 years tops. So when I think back, I really can't recall where I've ever been preferred, denied, chose because of my skin tone. Now, if things were happening behind the scenes, then it was definitely veiled to me, and I did not know. I can think in my dating life, I've never been told that, like, you know, I was attracted to you because of your skin tone. I've never been told that. I'm trying to even think in workspaces where I have been a part of teams where there was myself and possibly someone else that was Black, but yeah, no, I mean, I hate to say it, we're both Black, so we both ain't getting, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're both getting kind of the same experience. I don't think they're like, well, let's give you a little bit more, because I don't think I can say that happened.
For work, I'd say I definitely haven't noticed it, but when I say I haven't experienced it personally, I've heard of it. Now, I've heard of a lot, and I've heard people talking about, particularly, you know, the folks that live in LA, Christine. Yeah, but we'll listen to you in terms of, and it was, I mean, I've heard the whispers, but someone who brought it up to the front was the time we were on a live with Kojo, and what's his name? Big Mike was on, and he was talking about, the guys aren't checking for people who look like you. And then it just resonated because I've been hearing it over and over and over again. And recently, as last week, I met someone new. We're in the airport waiting for a flight, and we just got talking. And for some reason, she told me that she used to live in LA. She was a trainer. And this was years ago. And we got talking about, you know, her son's dad, and then about somehow we got to dating. And then she re-emphasized the same thing. She said literally she'd go into a club, and then she's, you know, that of course you're going out, so you're ready to look nice, dressed to the nines, and it'll be maybe two sisters, and, you know, maybe a friend of theirs who's Asian or white, and literally the brothers will push them out the way so they could get, like, oh, come, like, how can I talk to your friend? And that was, I haven't experienced that directly, but I've heard about it over and over again. And so that's why I was like, okay, you know what? Are people really experiencing this, or is it just something, or is it hearsay? Because for me now it's hearsay.
Yeah.
Yetunde, what do you think about that?
What do I think? What do I think about what you said, or what do I think about colorism in LA?
What do you think about what I've said? Have you experienced it? Have you seen it, or is it just hearsay? Because you know what's going up there.
It's funny.
I think that it could be both, right? It doesn't. It's not like an either or situation. It could. It's an and, because everything is from perspective, right? It's like that age-old saying: if you chop a wood, or if a tree falls in a wood and no one's there to hear it, did it really make a sound, right? So if I don't see it, then to me that it's fine to say in my existence it doesn't exist or whatever. But for me, funny enough, I guess it wouldn't be a surprise, I've experienced far more colorism with Black people than anyone else. I mean, in my formative years, I was mostly around white people, and I absolutely experienced racism, but I would have experienced that, I believe, regardless of the shade I was. And there weren't really other mixed race people for me to compare myself to, which I think was actually a blessing in disguise. But then I remember one of my first crushes. I was 13 and I was going temporarily to this school that was all Black people. Every single person in the school was Black apart from one girl, and she was Colombian. And there was this guy that I really liked, and he was light-skinned. He probably had light eyes, because that was my thing for a while. I mean, I still like that, but just not only that. So someone told him I had a crush on him, and he said to me, I could never date you, Christine, because you're too Black, and I don't want my kids to be Black. And I will never forget it. But other than that particular experience, there have been very few times, if I'm honest, there have been very few times where I felt that someone wasn't attracted to me just because of my skin color, whether they were white, Black, light skin, whatever it was. I just had very few of those experiences. But it doesn't mean that I haven't felt the weight of being a dark-skinned woman at times, especially, you know, Lighten, as you know, I used to act, and I was on set once, and I was the only Black person on set. And I was the last person to get in the makeup chair. And other than always having your makeup being done gray, which is just like minimal, that's always going to happen, is this makeup artist started flipping out, because she was like, you're too dark. You're too dark. I don't have your color. You're too dark. And she's like, what am I going to do? Why didn't you bring your makeup? If you're that dark, you need to bring your makeup. Yeah. And I was in the moment, I was just kind of like, I think I was used to being or feeling like my color could be a bad thing in that situation. So I didn't really respond to it. It's more of like a slow, like over the years, I was like, wow, that was really bad. But afterwards, there was a white actress who overheard what she said, and she pulled me to the side, and she said, "You need to complain about her because that wasn't okay." So there have been those experiences. Yes, that's me answering your question.
Yeah, I think to that point, Didi, before I come to you, I feel like in those situations you find, at least I've seen that the advocates or people who step forward a lot of the time are people outside of the realm. Because when I think of colorism, like I said, I feel it happens within us. Like even living in Nigeria, I remember back then, okay, so back in Nigeria, they consider me light. There was a time I was going through my tennis phase. So I was outside like 3 times a week playing tennis and feeling like my little Serena and Venus thing was going on. And then, someone said something about one day, who was it, that you look like you rubbed your face in charcoal? Like, what's wrong with you? Where have you been? Yeah, like, I guess that meant that I'd had a tan. So my forehead was all tan. Maybe it was just like a round circle of tan. I don't know what it was. And it really made me think about, I don't think I quit. I didn't necessarily quit it because of that, but eventually I stopped playing. But I remember thinking, so it's those little words that people say to you. Whereas other people, other people enjoy, they're like, oh, you look really nice and brown. But I think a lot of the time, depending on the avenues you're in, I don't want to say being educated, not necessarily through school, but being exposed and being more enlightened. There's an understanding where we watch what we're saying, and what we're saying isn't harmful to the people listening. Because the real aim of having these kind of conversations is hoping that our children don't have to go through, for example, you hearing someone say that to you, because that way Yetine could simply have said, no thank you, or maybe not, he could have let you down, but the fact that he had to mention your shade and felt comfortable doing it, knowing there will be no repercussion, is the reason why I kind of wanted us to talk about it. Because I even hear like your niece, everyone's niece, because now we're all related, Mide sometimes talks to me about, they don't necessarily, they don't say the mean things.
I have to tell you, can't just be inviting every single person into the family. That's not how it works.
Oh my bad.
Everyone has to agree.
Whoa.
So I can talk now. Yeah, no, she's like, I just can't. So you know what? While we're on that, I'll get back to my real point. Sinead was trying to submit an application yesterday. Do you think you might look at it? You may not even stamp the yes now, but she was asking for an app. She's here. So what you want to say to her, sis? Like, what's up with that? She wants to submit an application. What's up? Yeah. Oh, really? Well, I don't hear anything. I see you're quiet now. That's what I saw.
Considerations take about 30 business days. So
said 30 business days. Okay.
Business days.
Is there money order that goes with that? But back to my point before I get distracted, was how my daughter today, she was talking about how people treat her in school, and it's not blatant where they're like, oh, you're da 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 da, but just like these subtle jokes about, switch the light off, we only see your teeth, and just, I guess they think they're joking amongst themselves, but it's still stuff she thinks of. Like in terms of dating, for her, she didn't say it so much, but to her, she feels like she's not necessarily attractive to, guys who are black and brown. That's the consensus. Now she's only just going to college, so it hasn't been developed, but that's my concern. I don't want her going to spaces and just feeling less than because some uneducated, foolish, childish boy who wasn't raised right says something that's harmful. Because a lot of times we don't remember the good things people say. We remember the hurtful things they say, and it kind of goes around with us. So that's my concern really in terms of. So I was coming to you, Didi. What do you think?
You see, for me, like I said, it all has to do with my culture. I am from a small island. I haven't experienced colorism in my island because we don't look at that. Be honest, like there are so many different shades of black people walking around. We don't look at colorism, so I haven't experienced it. But you do get some people that make some reckless statements, and then having this conversation, when you think about it, it comes off as colorism. But to say like growing up, okay, to me that's colorism. I've experienced it. No, as an adult, I have experienced a little bit of colorism, but is at my job in the US. Like the certain supervisors would prefer, or they would give the lighter skinned black person more leeway than a darker person. Like they'll probably get rid of you faster. So in terms of that, yes, I've probably experienced it at work. And when it comes to growing up, no.
No issues. That's fair enough. There's something I came across that I wanted to show you guys to kind of emphasize what I'm talking about. Let me share that with you so y'all can see what it is. So it's this casting call. You can't really see it, so I kind of read out the parts.
Wait. Lighten. Are we just gonna skip over the fact that now you know how to do tech stuff? Just like put stuff up on your screen? Oh, you're just gonna pretend you've been
so
doing
you're
this
just
your
gonna
whole
put,
life,
so you're just gonna have my
this is
butt out
natural
there
and
swinging
normal?
in the wind is what you're saying. You see me smoothly transitioning through my slides, and sisters won't stop me and say, hey, oh, so you know how to press click. But
Can
yeah,
I ask, can I ask one
For your
question?
Crocs.
Which one of you guys is older?
Lighten.
Well,
and she didn't buy one of those days in the market. Like, look.
well, if you're older, she's just being a typical little sister. That's what she's being.
And that's what she does all day long.
It brings me joy.
help
I don't
herself.
know what to tell you.
Yes, we see the elation on your face, Christine. You're glowing at this point.
So back to the topic. While people are watching the Cuomo thing going on, is what kind of caught me was there's this casting call. I don't know if you guys heard about it. For the movie Straight Outta Compton. They were casting for females. I think they were for extras, and they had 4 zones: A, B, C, D. A was, they called them the A girls were the hottest of the hottest. They had to have real long hair. They had to be classy looking, and they were Black, white, Asian, Middle Eastern, or mixed race. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. B, these were fine girls with long natural hair as well, but they had to be light skinned, the Beyonce type, right? C, they wanted African American girls medium to light skin with a weave. That was the request for the casting call. This is what they put out. And then D, the D girls, the D list, were African American girls who were poor and not in good shape. Yo, when I read this, yeah. They put Beyonce in a B. And this wasn't like a private work email. This was a casting call they put out to the agents as to this is what we're looking for. And so this kind of hops onto the point where we're going with, is this, it was done in plain sight. But the thing is, I don't believe it was done by, it wasn't a white person that typed it out. It was Black people describing this, because Straight Outta Compton, that movie was really based, it was a Black story. So what do you guys think about this?
But Lighton, whose narrative do you think it was Black people who wrote that, who typed that out? And I'm not giving them a pass or anything, but also something that we need to remember when we see things like that is it may have been Black people putting it out there, but who were they answering to? Like, whose standards were they trying to fill? Because especially if you think now it's getting better, but it's been slow progress. Like if you want something done, other than if you're thinking about like Tyler Perry, most of the money is going to come from white people.
Yeah.
So Hollywood is forever and always pushing a narrative, whether we think they are or not. And that's when you see it broken down like that, it's less about feeling personally attacked by what section we fall into, but more about look at this narrative they're pushing as evidence that my shade and your shade don't actually mean anything. It's just a narrative that people are pushing.
But that's the thing, though. Like, let's say they are the ones bankrolling it. Do they go as far as dictating the details? That's the question. It's like you putting out a casting call. I mean, maybe if the casting
Where
company,
do you think they got those details from?
Don't
like
they just,
if you think about, so for example, for me, growing up, my idea of what the ghetto and what ghetto Black people look like looked like what I saw on TV. So now if I was now 10 years later in the position of putting together a movie that had to be bankrolled by a certain type of person or a certain percentage of people, what do you think I would think of, or what details do you think I would include to push that narrative of this is what ghetto Black people look like?
I hear you. I hear you. So at the same time, in the same strength, you're still saying it's not necessarily us. Is them?
No. I'm not saying it's not us. I'm just saying that it wasn't. It wasn't obviously created by us. We've become our own. We've become the weapon, right? They weaponized us, and now we're the weapon. But it didn't come from us. But it's like at some point, it's like we got to look at where are we getting this from, and we can no longer. Even though I'm saying it's coming from white people, we can't continue to blame white people. Like what you were saying about Midday earlier. That's how colorism persists, right? Midday has this experience at school. So then when she grows up and she's looking for a guy to date, do you think that's going to be something on her mind when she thinks about bringing kids into this world? Do I want my kid to go through what I went through? So now all of a sudden she has a preference that isn't dark skin, and that's about her wanting her kids not to have the same experience as her. So we have to continually check ourselves, check our children, and allow our children to grow up in an environment where they realize that what other people have to say about us is simply a reflection of them and their traumas and their fear rather than actual truth.
Boom. I completely agree.
I think, Lola, with this particular casting sheet that you shared, so we know that Felix Gary Gray, right, he directed Straight Outta Compton. And I just took a quick sec to go to Google to just get some information on the casting company that was used. So they used Sandy Alessi Casting for all the casting on that movie. And from what I can remember from some of the clips and interviews that I watched about the making of the movie, was they were taking the 4 gentlemen that were in NWA and trying to get what their experiences were, creating this group and bringing it, like kind of making it like a docu-film in a sense, but not a full-on documentary. So I feel like between those gentlemen who were involved in the making of the movie, in addition with Sandy Alessi Casting, which when I went to Facebook to look up her, she's a Caucasian woman. But it says that she did all the casting for the movie. So I don't know who really typed that up. I don't know if we'll ever know, but that movie set from some of the clips that I've seen of the making of it had a lot of Black people on it, as well as the actual members of NWA talked about how they went down to the set on certain days and stayed for hours or whatever and watched what was going on. So I kind of feel like, too, part of them was also saying like, yeah, well, the kind of girls that were coming to the concerts look like this, and this, and this. And so get those kind of girls if you want to try to recreate this scene, right? So, but again, where do we get all of that from? The Beyonce prototype. When did she become who made her the standard for beauty in the Black community?
Yeah.
Like who's sitting behind that desk, like approving all that? Like, I don't.
Yeah. Okay, before I jump into standard of beauty, what do you think about that casting call? You look troubled. You have a daughter already. What do you think about this? Her, dealing in this.
No, you know what? No. I'm troubled. I'm troubled because I missed like half of it. Like, I'm troubled. My feed just went off, so I kind of missed everything. And plus, the font was really, really small. So if I'm going to pretend like I just saw it anyway, it is shocking, but it reminds me of a couple parties that were happening in Nigeria. And you have these people, I've forgotten what they're called, but they're kind of responsible for inviting the guests, sometimes inviting the ushers, the waiters, the waitresses that kind of work there. And I think the agreement was make sure she's tall, make sure the women are tall, make sure they're light, they have to be light. And it's like, it kind of reminds me of that. So even though if, for example, it wasn't a Black person who was responsible for the casting of the movie, colorism is definitely a thing. Even if I haven't gone through it, I know it's real. I think it's just difficult because it can be so troublesome and so divisive, but I don't know if there's a way to kind of get rid of it, even to get to the root of it. Once somebody says, I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist, then kind of what Christine was touching on, your own experience can be the only thing that you have to go on. And if someone says they can't relate to you, then that's where the conversation ends, So I think I'm listening to everyone speak, and I'm being really enlightened by what everybody's saying. But the thing I keep coming back to is what can be done about it for the people who do have this kind of experience. I think we have, on a balance, we seem to have very balanced and objective experiences between the five of us. But I know that there's some people out there that will have some very painful stories. But then what's to be done about those stories, though? And so that's, yeah, but yeah, conclusion, it's a shame. Shame, shame, shame. Even the things that get really, really bad. Okay.
But I can tell you one thing that can curb on it, and Christine said it, is it all has to do with the household. That's where it starts, because no child is born racist. They are made racist. When you see kids don't look at color, kids don't look at like your hair, they don't look at those things. Like they would just want to play with each other. But then not until the parents say, come, hey, don't talk to this person because they're lighter, don't talk to this person because they're darker. Oh, don't talk to this person because the hair nappy. You understand? So it all starts with the parents and how they raise the kids. So that would actually curb on it a bit. It will not get rid of it, but it can curb on it, and then you have less instances where you get those situations happening. But I think it starts from the household, that the parents and also the schools as well, the society. That's why it also with society, because I brought that up earlier. And with that casting call, that's a perfect example. Is society. Is how society views things and they portray it to the public. So with all that label, people like to label stuff too much, and that's one of the things that even got it worse, is the labeling. So they start to label it as colorism. They start to label it as this and that. So it don't get it any better. It actually gets it worse. So I just think when it comes to colorism, because like I said, for me, growing up as a child, I didn't experience it. But then from what we're speaking about, it started to look like it's colorism because that's what they label it as. But then if I never knew about colorism, growing up, I would never know that was colorism I was experiencing. You understand what I'm saying? So it's basically, I just feel like for it to slow down a bit, it also starts from the household and schools and society. Basically, if they change the narrative of how they label stuff or portray stuff to us for us to see, it will help curb on that colorism thing.
So that kind of boils us down to what we were kind of discussing.
Can I quickly jump? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead. What did you want to say?
Okay. I just wanted to quickly listen to I kind of wanted to balance why this conversation is very interesting, but also I don't want to say vague, but it can be problematic. And the thing is, I think about with like Caucasian white people, when you may have a preference for blonde or brunette, I'd be very interested in finding out whether there are deep conversations as to why one person prefers blonde man or woman to a brunette and vice versa. And I think the reason why I'm bringing that up is that even if there is colorism, if I'm playing devil's advocate, as human beings, are we really keeping the same energy, so to speak, for the other discriminatory elements or characteristics of people that we may have when choosing a mate or a friend or an employee? For example, I go back to the thing I said about the height. There may be so many people that only want to date tall people, but is there a heightism issue that is being spoken about? Or you prefer people to have certain features, body features? Is there an ism that is spoken about that? And I think on one hand, you call it an issue. On another hand, somebody calls it a preference. Yeah. Obviously, if you've been through it, if you're on the bad side of this ism, you will have a lot to say about it. But do you care so much if somebody else who you didn't pick is also on the other side of one of the choices that they may not have an ism for yet? So there's the good and there's the bad, and that's all I want to say anyway.
Oh, but that's a great point, and what you're talking about really leads to like a whole bigger question than just colorism, right? Because when we're talking about colorism, we're basically just picking part of an entire spectrum and talking about that. Whereas the entire spectrum is the idea that someone is more or less worthy based on how they look to us personally, as if A, we're the center of the world, and as if B, the only thing that's important about a soul is how they look. So what you said is really interesting, because now you just have like so many other questions. So sorry to interrupt, Lighton. I'm actually not really sorry to interrupt, but you can continue now.
Well, you can cut and you're actually addressing what I'm trying to say. Like, who dictates what the standard of beauty is, and where does it come from? So we're on the same wavelength. Like, go ahead. You were saying, because that's the question. It's like, who determines that?
The real answer to that is us, but we're taught that it's not us. That's the whole trick of it, right? If we raise our children to really know that beauty is truly about us and how we feel, then those narratives like you're better if you're thinner, you're better if you have no cellulite, you're better if you're light skinned, you're better if you have long hair, all of those narratives cease to actually bother you. But in order for people to make money off certain ideals and ideas, they have to convince you that there's something wrong with you. And if you listen to or buy into what they're saying, they can fix you. But if you raise your children to really be in touch or connect to who they are, to the heart of it, or you can do that for yourself, you can self-parent yourself, right? Then those things no longer become an issue, and it's all about energy. So who dictates it? The way that we're living right now, society. We have a very clear idea pretty much all over the world that there's one particular standard of beauty, and the main standard of beauty is anything that's in proximity to whiteness. But the actual standard of beauty comes from within us. But as soon as we sell that or give that away or outsource that, then we get caught up in all the rest of the stuff.
So, you know what, I like what you're saying. It comes within us, but the truth is, you get all these things that we say in terms of, you know, the black and the berry, the sweeter the juice, I'm black and I'm proud, all these really nice, cute slogans. But in actuality, in real time, how do we really put that into ourselves? How do we really, because if you've been conditioned to be one way or to believe one thing, how do you stop and believe something else?
That's a really good question. So are you asking me? Okay, so for me, it would be first identifying that everything is a belief. And this can be really mind-blowing to people. They're like, no, that's just the way the world is, and there are facts. No, there's not. Because, you know, for example, I could say that Lighton's not really funny, right? And Ope might say Lighton is funny. Sorry.
There's a hater in aisle 9.
You are funny, Lighton. You are.
Like, we need to clean up. Like, all right.
No, Lighton, you are very
I'm gonna let you be because you're a guest.
That is the one good thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, back to what we were saying. So it's, first of all, realizing that everything is a belief. Every single thing is a belief. And when you can see that everything is a belief, you allow yourself to now question the beliefs that you have. So for example, if I think I am worse off because I am dark skinned, so why would I think that? Why do I think that lighter skinned people are more attractive? And then I could say, are there evidence? I could look for evidence of dark skinned people like me who are actually beautiful, because that helps. You don't actually need the evidence, because a lot of the things, for example, if someone says something's impossible, it just means they haven't done it yet. So that means there's no evidence that that's possible, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. But it helps to have evidence. So you look for evidence for a dark-skinned woman who embodies the energy or whatever it is that you want or you feel like you want to move with, right? It starts from there. And then once you see that there's evidence to show that, oh, it's not true, I'm not less attractive just because I'm dark-skinned, which is honestly crazy. That idea is crazy, that we would believe that it's possible to be less attractive simply because of the color of your skin, right? And then when you realize that this is a false belief and you're carrying around a lot of false beliefs, and let me know that sometimes I can say things from kind of like an ungrounded area, so you can't necessarily relate to doing in real life. So if I'm not being grounded enough, Lighton, feel free to say, like, what actually does that mean? Or tell us what you're trying to say.
No, I hear what you're saying. It makes some sense to me. And I guess Yeah, it's a lot easier it's easier said than done, because we have a million or $1 billion industry of bleaching creams.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you have it where you are, Didi, but in Nigeria, it's $1 million industry, different types of bleaching creams, different strengths. Even though they know that it's bad for them and it damages their skin, they're still doing the system where there's a bathing system. You go into a bathtub, immerse yourself, and then you come out like a Michael Jackson.
I've seen videos of it. It's not for me, I've seen it. It's more of a bigger thing in Jamaica, but on my island, no. We don't. I hardly see people do it on my island. No. But also to answer that question, I think there's that saying, "Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder," right? So for me, I think it's all what you want or what you want to see, what you feel like, what you like. That's how I see it. And also, I think social media also plays a part in the generation coming up now. Because as a child, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have so much access to, go and just look at certain things and say, okay, like, do you know they have those magazines? They say the beauties of the world. Like, they have those magazines. And every year they would have a new one coming out saying the beauties of the world. But if you look at those magazines, what do you see? The women you see in those magazines are what? Light skin. You don't really see dark skin in those magazines.
Yeah.
So like I said, social media platforms, like they send out, or like I said, they send it out to, young people or people or us from the outside looking in, and they make us they get that narrative and make us start to think, okay, beauty has to do with something lighter or brown, not black. So that's what I've been trying to say. For me, like, it all has a part. Social media has a part to play with it. It all has to do with society. It goes back to society, social media, like, all those different platforms that just throw it out there and make us think and believe that, okay, that's what beauty is. But then for me, like I say, beauty is in the eyes of the viewer. Basically, it's what you see, what you like, what you want. It's up to you.
Lolo's okay if I say something?
Yeah, please jump in.
Okay, so all of this stuff, I love this discussion because it just always leads to a bigger question than what we are originally asking. Mm-hmm. And when it comes down to putting, like, we are little kids seeing mostly light-skinned people or white people on TV, that can be traumatic. And if we raise children who are aware that there are different priorities or different things that are important to different people, and it's not just one thing. So we tend to, in this world, put certain things on pedestals, like being a doctor or being an engineer, being a lawyer, being a model, being an actress, being an athlete. And then all the other things that fall outside of that are not as important. And that's what does us a disservice, because if we promote the idea that really what is important is peace and well-being, it doesn't matter how you do that. The most important thing is peace and well-being. Then we don't have people who don't actually want to be doctors, don't actually want to be lawyers, don't actually want to be models going towards those things. And we don't have people looking at people in those positions like they're better than me because they're on the cover of a magazine. If we change what is seen as important, mainstream important, like it's not just one thing, it's not all about like ego goals, it's not all about being seen one way, then that allows the dark-skinned woman who's looking at light-skinned women on the cover of the magazine and realize that it doesn't mean anything about her, that that's on the magazine and she's not.
Yeah. So I left the comment here, Max, another family member. Yesterday, you can hate if you want to. Max left a comment here, and that was.
Listen, it's not about hating. You can't just introduce random people into the family. That's not how
random. Look. Let me start. Let me use my position as a person who got to this planet before you. My voting rights are a little heavier than yours. So I'm allowing you.
That's not true. Opa, tell her that's not how it works in a family. Just because you're older, you can't choose who comes in. That's not how any of this works.
But let's switch back and be serious. Let's not be distracted. Let's back to Max's. Max put a point here, and that's what I was trying to say with Okwe's thing. In terms of when we say that we are black as opposed to being brown, But then when we think of how they link people, like when you think about the colors black and white, like what they associate, white's pure and it's heavenly and it's this. When you're getting married, you're wearing white. When you die, you wear black. The demon's covered in black, this black white thing, which is part of the reason why, because even white people are not white. They're pink, they're brown, they're a color too. We're all colored. But that's the reason why I kind of told okay, you're brown. You have something to say about Christine? Or are you okay with that?
So I think I love that point. First of all, I love that point, but that doesn't mean that you can tell people what they are. The point is good, and even to really see the point takes like tapping out of the matrix for a second. Okay, let's see what's really going on here. Let's see what they're doing, and then you can tap back in the matrix. But if you're telling other people what they are, you're not allowing them to tap out of the matrix. And if they're not tapping out of the matrix, they're not going to see what you're saying anyway.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I know Okwa is out the matrix, so he gets what I was saying.
No. You can't tell him. That's what we're saying. Okay.
I'm both in and out. I get it.
All right, but before we digress, because hopefully people who are looking now and will be looking at the replay will get something from what we're saying. So the whole point of this was to put an awareness out there, to be a part of a conversation, so that not just us, but the people behind us have a better existence. They have a way of building up that self-confidence and not believing the lie or the standard of beauty that's been put out there, put on the magazines, that's better, because we're all beautiful inside. Yeah. So the point here we're saying now is, so when we talked about colorism and dating, are we being affected by it? Should we be affected by it? And if it does come in front of us, is that something we shouldn't take personal and just acknowledge it's them, it's not me, but still walk around with that confidence? Because if you think about a teenager, if she was told what you were told, I mean, you've done a lot of inner work. You're no longer, what other name did I have for you? You're woke now. It took you a minute to get woke here today, but you woke. So how can I help someone who might have experienced what you experienced? Someone who might have experienced what you experienced, but how did they link up and actually begin to love themselves? That's the question.
Okay, that's a really long answer. Or it could be. It could actually be an easy question, an easy answer. But one of the things you said, let me think back. There was something you said that made me think of something. I've lost it. If it comes back to me, it's fine. But first of all, I would say that loving yourself, there's an aspect of you, first of all, that already loves yourself. So you seeking things that you believe will make you feel good, even if it's skin lightening products or losing weight, all of these things that won't actually make you feel good, you seeking that is in an effort to make yourself feel good. And because you want to feel good, that indicates that you already love yourself. So if you can sit in that, and then instead of asking, when we think about our skin color, is this enough? Is this good enough? We're leaving ourselves. We're leaving the confines of us, what we think is important, what we think counts, and we're looking out at other people. So we're telling other people, like, what do you think about me? Am I good enough for you? Am I beautiful enough for you? Do they like me? And if I need to know that they like me so I can feel confident when I walk past them. But you're asking people and you're looking for acceptance from people who don't love and accept themselves. People can only meet you where you are, or where they are, sorry. So if they already don't accept and validate and love themselves, how are they going to accept and love and validate you? So you're looking for something. You want people to give you something that they literally don't know how to give you. And the only answer to that is to go within yourself. And I know that it sounds so airy-fairy, but there's nothing that you need outside of here. There is nothing, this feeling of I'm not good enough because this and that comes from within you. There's nothing you can change outside of you that will change that feeling. So you got to get real good and comfortable. Well, this is it. It's just me. This is what I've got for the rest of my life. Everything that I want to change is in an effort to improve my life. I can do that right now just by simple things like, how can I even enjoy this water more than I would any other time, right? It's in the simple things that make up the big things. And if you're putting your energy into, and some people might not like this, if you're putting your energy into proving that colorism exists, or proving that this thing that oppresses you, because it does, exists, you're wasting your energy, because that energy could actually go into you feeling good rather than proving that there are things that exist that make you feel bad. The fact that you already feel bad is enough evidence. No one else needs to accept, know, or see that. You're already experiencing that. So that doesn't matter. So instead, you could put that energy into, okay, what would make me feel good? How can I feel good? What does it even feel like to feel good and confident in this body? We're all chasing this thing, like, let's be confident, let's be powerful, let's be that. But we don't know what that is. So how can you get that if you don't know what it feels like? So first of all, get really clear on what you want. Like I ask my clients all the time in first sessions, what do you want? No one knows.
Right. That's a
So
good
put
point.
the energy into knowing what you actually really want, how you really want to feel, who you want to be. And guess what? You can be that person right now. It literally doesn't matter if the person next to you thinks that light-skinned people are 10 times more attractive than you. That makes no difference. It only makes the difference in your life and in results when you allow that energy to affect you in terms of following you around. Like we've all had the experience of someone who is attractive, right? You first meet them and you're like, this person is really attractive, but they kind of walk with their shoulders down and they like almost bow to you when they're talking, and you know, and then you're like, oh, there's something wrong with them. But there was nothing wrong with them before you saw that they thought there was something wrong with them, right?
Good points. Now I'm gonna go to the guys now. Thanks, Professor Christine.
Yeah.
Didi, you are like, as we're rounding up, like
Well,
we've touched, but I wanted to kind of get, I mean, guys don't get affected so much. I think they get shown images of what they should think is the standard of beauty. So what would your opinion be of that? And where do you think we go from here? Because, you know, sometime from now, sometime in the future, you will have a child or children. And what would you want them to, how would you want them to be able to avoid, not so much going sticking with the title like Yetunde said, which makes sense, not so much focused on colorism, but there are these elements out there that we know are out there. How would you protect them? How would you
see, your sister is Kristen is so right. It also has to do like you love yourself. It's how you love yourself. Because I can tell you, in growing up, I used to get teased about my skin color, like, you know, I'm black, I'm this and that. It used to affect me until I learned it on my own, and I even preach it to my niece. You always have to love yourself. Like, don't let nobody tell you you're less than or you're more than. Always value yourself, value your worth, and don't let nobody bring you down. And I always preach that to her, because one time she was being teased at school because of her accent, because she's Canadian. And I told her I told her how I dealt with it, and she tried it and it actually worked. I told her I used to laugh with them when they were giving me jokes. So when they realized I started laughing with them, they stopped, because then they can't give me jokes anymore. So then that also built my confidence in myself. It made me see that, okay, well, I can do this. Like I really, really felt confident in myself. And then throughout the rest of my life in high school and in school, I wasn't teased. So it all has to do with, like, you know, what parents have, like I said, parents have to play a little part. You preach to your kids, you make them, teach them how to love themselves, always tell them good things, compliment them, praise them about their looks, how they look. So moving forward, I just feel like self-love and self-confidence, you know, it will build your self-esteem, and that will help you as a person to just not allow people to, like, put you down or tarnish your name or say things about you. So it's basically self-love and self-confidence would really, really help. I think that's what I think.
Thank you, Didi. OPE, what up? What do you think? Standard of beauty, you're talking to Ife, you're bringing her up now. What are you thinking of that, and where do we go from here?
Well, speaking to my daughter, first of all, I think Christine was really right. You know, imagine someone who's gone through that.
Oh, this Christine was right.
Always like,
let me hold up. Let's cut this. Christine was right. I just want to hear.
I'm going to use my phone, but go on. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Lola.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I get invited? Can I get invited to your family reunions, please? I would like to be invited to your family reunions, because I think I'll have a great laugh. I will.
All right, we'll behave. Oh, yeah, okay. Talk. What's up?
Yeah. So basically, you don't want to be that parent who's always highlighting it, what you went through, that, oh, just know that people are going to judge you based on how light or dark you are. But at the same time, it does happen. So what you want to do is obviously you want to kind of raise them up in an environment where they always feel good about themselves. But I also would never want to kind of highlight or particularly feel sorry for them, even if there was a colorism, because we live in a beautiful world, but we also live in a very cold world. And based on what I was saying about the heightism or ageism, it's like you are always going to get something from somebody to do with something. You know, Dee spoke about accents. There's always going to be something. And if you let it get the better of you, then you become defined by that. You know, Christine also said what she was saying might be seen as airy-fairy. Sometimes the simplest and most profound things do seem airy-fairy because the other people are like, oh, it's easy for you to say, I'm all the way over here. Yeah, but in all fairness, I can't do anything about where you are. You still have to kind of get to where I am if you don't want to spend millions in bleaching your skin and, you know, just doing all these things because of how you identify with yourself. So anyway, going straight to answer you directly, I would always tell my daughter that she is the best human being on earth. And if it came up, I don't know, at her school, somebody picking someone else over her, I think I would always try to deflect and try to point in either, you don't even want to point in the direction of other people who may like her, because then she's going to start defining her value from who likes her. You always put it back on her. You know, those people are blind. Actually, I did this with one of our nieces who told me like 3-4 months ago that, yeah, you know, well, I'm not really the girl that people are checking for. And I was like, you have to understand that people your age are incredibly stupid and you just need them to catch up a little bit, you know. And whether she went home feeling emboldened by that, at least she had a good laugh about it. And it was true, because I don't want to call any kid stupid, you know. Everybody has growing up to do, you know, they may be smart. But the fact is, if you're going picking complexions based on what you see on TV, well, you're not stupid, but you're kind of ignorant. So you don't want that person you're talking to feel bad about someone else's ignorance. And that has to work. That is the cheapest, the most profound way to always put it back on having them see themselves in this great light and looking at the other person as unfortunate, really. And that's what I would do for my daughter, basically.
Lola, I know I like to talk, but I do have one last thing to say. So this question, this question that you're answering, I believe that the real answer, when we talk about how we raise our kids, we want to get like fluffy and nice about it and teach them how to be confident. But if we want our children to really have confidence, actually have confidence, we need to change the way that we discipline them. We need to change the way that we, because a lot of the times we'll hurt our children, as in beating them or punishing them, because we don't agree with what they're doing. Now, when you raise your child to just be a mini you, just another you, no matter what they really think and feel, that's not confidence. They're now outsourcing themselves to you, which means when they grow up, they'll do it to someone else. They will never actually be in touch with who they are, what they want, what's really important to them, because they were taught what was okay when they were a kid. Okay, if I do that, I'm going to get beaten. If I do that, I get yelled at. If I do that, this happens. That doesn't lead to a child with confidence. That leads to a follower. That leads to a child that does what they're told rather than what they really feel.
But one thing, so I kind of disagree, because I mean, you don't abuse your child. You don't do that. I don't believe in that. But discipline also helps, for me, build a child confidence, because when you discipline them, it helps build their confidence by they knowing what's wrong, what's right, and what is better to them than just, you know, like letting them feel the way they want to feel. Because sometimes the way they might want to feel or the stuff they might want to do, it probably cause them to do something erratic, or probably cause them to have some bad behaviors, unlike if you straighten them out. I'm just saying. That's just what I think.
I love it, and I think most people think that way. We could talk about this all day, and we're starting to get on like some of my favorite subjects.
well,
then the question is, what's good or bad? Because what you consider bad, your child might not consider bad. And if you actually want your child to have, so you have to ask yourself, do you want your child to be confident and love themselves, or do you want them to do what you want them to do? Because those are two different things.
Both.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
But
you did.
Both. How do you?
To a certain extent. To a certain extent.
It's to an extent.
They have to do what I want them to do, because
exactly.
to some reason, there's a reason why I'm directing them. I'm merely a director. I don't own them. I didn't make them. I simply brought out the vessel for them here. But am I perfect? No. But as a human being, I have some idea of what I think you should do, and I would like you to avoid. Although I know your personality type, I would like to avoid some of the pitfalls I've fallen into. So me directing you is for you to avoid those pitfalls. But there's a balance, and we grow every day.
Might not be their pitfalls. That actually might be where they fly. And if they hadn't hit that pitfall, they wouldn't have then soared right afterwards. So you can't put I understand that as parents. And first of all, as we talk about this, I think it's really important to first say, I don't have any kids. So it's really important for me to say that, not to put your opinion on your kid, because I don't have a kid. I don't have to worry about that. But we often discipline our children based on our personal beliefs. That's not instilling confidence in them. You're still teaching them to answer to other people about what is good or bad. And when you think about the people in our society who are leaders and who are thought leaders in their field, they're not doing what other people told them to do. They're not doing it the right way. They're doing it their way. But in order for you to figure out what your way is, what your own particular brand of magic is, you have to know who you are. And to know who you are, you have to not say, this is bad because my mom told me it was bad. I think this is bad because I've experienced it and I've decided it's bad. Not because you told me it was bad.
I want you to answer Mar's question, because that's a very interesting question.
Oh, this is wonderful. So if confidence is at the expense of morality. Okay, wonderful. So, but who gets to decide what morality is?
Oh, Jesus.
But that's
not going nowhere today.
Question at hand, because when you say it's you,
no. But that's a very good question. It's a good question.
It's you deciding that. You're like, I've decided that what you're doing. That listen, I smoke weed. My mom thinks that's immoral. Some people think
why are you putting our business out there? Like, not everybody knows my sister's a weed head. Like, I've got a rep to protect, sis. For just this my Alright, go ahead. I don't indulge.
That you might do that I would think is immoral. Does it make it immoral just because I think it is? So that's the question at hand. Right? And that was a great question, and that's the age-old question.
So anybody, yeah, because you thought it was a beautiful question, that who decides what's moral. I think my personal opinion, I don't know everything. I've only been here a little while, but it's based on how we grew up, what we believe, but what we base our beliefs, Christian beliefs on, if you're Christian or if you're Muslim. There's a system, there's a code, but everybody's code is different. And the extent to which it is depends on who you are. But to some extent, we have to follow some code, or else there'll be complete chaos. So there has to be a moral code that we create. Do we come outside the lines? Yes, we do. But that's what makes us individuals. But we have to go by something, or we'll fall for anything and everything.
Of course.
That's my opinion. Do you ever ask who created that code?
Of course.
Huh?
Do you ever ask yourself who created that code? So
who created the moral code
by this morality that was created by someone?
So and now what we're doing right now, so just in a very loose opinion is, okay, so if we're Christian, right? So we're not basing it based on the Bible. The Bible was divinely inspired by the Heavenly Father to some human beings on earth who now put it into writing. And to some extent, we kind of glean wisdom from it and live by it. Of course, the 10 Commandments is a big thing, and even the law is kind of based on that. Thou shalt not kill. You don't want to commit adultery. You don't want to steal somebody, stuff like that. So loosely kind of put like that. That's where our moral code is kind of lined about. So that's what we're following.
So does that mean that you don't care, or your preference is for your child to follow that moral code, and that's more important than anything else?
That's why I said there's a balance. It's two things. I want them to understand to a certain extent what I believe in to be right and not right? But also, there's going to get a point of growth where they also grow into themselves. But during that process with me, them listening to me has taught them discipline. They will understand there's certain order of things, because you can't exist in chaos. So that's what they're learning. But they will also grow to be their own personal people. But while they're with me, as they're following my rules, they understand discipline. You get up at a certain time because you have to go to school, you have to do certain things. You do your homework, you certain things that help you in anything else you're doing.
Okay, well,
but I more look at it as guideline. No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go.
No, I was just saying
I think that everybody is right, and I mean, I think everybody is right, and I guess people are probably tired of like, you're right. But first of all, I think Christine and everyone else, it's like we know where we come from and we know what we believe, so kind of really informs what we're saying. I look at it like there is definitely a thin line, because yes, you're a Christian, you want to make sure they're doing the right things. But for example, if I know a parent is beating a child maybe because he or she is getting some answers wrong in school, yeah, you don't want your child to grow up, I don't even want to say dumb or unintelligent, but when I listened to what Christine was saying, I was just thinking of people who discipline their children for everything based on what they think is right or wrong. I still think there's room for you to discipline your children in line with the tenets of the Bible, and make sure that you're not swamping your child, so that when you see little bits of individuality spouting out, you're not taking a hammer and banging it down every time, because like, I don't care about your individuality. I want you to be the top child, graduate in a top school, and go on to do a top job. And a lot of parents are like that. It's always the top thing, the top this, the top that. I'm going to beat you because that's not the top way to do things. And I think that to me is troubling, basically. So yeah, that's a slightly objective answer, but that's what I think of when I was listening to Christine. Yeah.
Ope gets it.
No, I got it. Don't get me wrong, I got it, but no, seriously, I got it. But the thing I'm just saying, like for me, look, we need to have boundaries, right? You don't have to be a pharaoh. You don't have to be a slave master, but you need to have boundaries in place, because then what you're saying also can go the wrong way. You understand? The child can think they can be or do whatever they want, and that's how they build their confidence. But then later on in life, where do they end up? They end up incarcerated. They end up doing a lot of stuff they're not supposed to be doing. So it just you need to have its boundaries to it. That's all I'm just saying. They need to have some boundaries to it.
I think it's problematic when we go from we gotta have boundaries, like my child needs to listen to what I want, or you're going to jail. That's how we're in this position here.
No.
I gotta listen to what my mom says.
Welcome to Christine Yetunde Ajishafe's views. She will drag you into the vortex. Don't do it, sir. Just don't do it. She take you there all day.
Yeah, I'm good because I gotta run. I also gotta get ready
for out in these YouTube streets. Didi, like, look, we're gonna be here all day. And we ain't trying to be. Yeah, Didi still has to.
I'm done. I'm muting myself.
But yeah, so
it was a very good conversation.
Yeah, no, it was a good sound off. So as we're trying to get off now, because I think we almost kind of went to a different topic. Does anyone have any last words before we jump off?
Yeah, all I gotta say is love yourself. Yeah, love yourself.
So wise words.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with Christine. Love yourself. Okay, she can't say I didn't agree with anything she said.
So you've heard it from the wise panel. Everybody, love yourself. No, jokes aside, it's true. It is self-love. At the end of the day, whether colorism or any of the isms exist, they won't really work on you if you love yourself. And that really starts from the home. Your parents putting that into you. And if they didn't, then you have to find it yourself. But the secret is really loving yourself. Right, Christine?
Yeah, I think that loving yourself has become like you know what? I'm sorry. Yes, love yourself. You know, because I can just go on all day. So we'll just limit at that, and don't guilt yourself for not loving yourself. Just work on accepting who you are, the way you'd accept your sister, the way I accept my sister. Obviously, she's far from perfect.
Really? I thought I was amazing.
So
Christine for president. Christine for president.
I don't think we want that, but that's another show topic. That's another show topic. But I know Didi has to go, and I really appreciate you guys coming on. It's not easy just looking at a screen and just talking, but I appreciate your views. I know people kind of like the latter part of the conversation, so if we're going to talk about kids one day, we'll bring it up and then make it a whole nother topic. But in the meantime, what did you want to say?
I would love to be there.
Okay, so folks, you've heard that. So yeah, thank you everyone. And I guess I'll do Didi style again. I guess 3, 2, 1. Everyone just say bye or say hi and say what's up before we clock out.
Bye.
Bye.
Au d'abord. Au revoir.
I don't know what